This is a CBS News special report. I'm Jesse Mitchell. We have breaking news from that closely watched race in Wisconsin. Liberal Judge Susan Crawford has won the race for a seat on the state Supreme Court. Experts see this race in a battleground state as a referendum on the Trump administration. The race also made monetary history. Take a look at these numbers. It was the most expensive judicial contest ever. Let's turn now to CBS News Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, what do you make of the results of this?
Big story here is turnout. That's maybe what all that money did, right? I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to sort of emphasize this number up here. Looking at potentially 2.3 million votes. Now, for context, that is going to be around half, around 50% of the voters in this state. Now, in a springtime election, in an off year for a judicial race, that is really big. So that's the top thing. Now, look, that turnout, the Republican or the conservative side had hoped that that would benefit them. But in fact, what we saw was Crawford running ahead of either Joe Biden 2020, Kamala Harris in 24, especially and I'll center this and I'll circle it, in and around Milwaukee and the Milwaukee suburbs, where Democrats have to do well to win a race. And so that is where the turnout story connects, Jesse.
So it's amazing that 50% of voters turned out for this. How did that play out in the margins that you're seeing and that divide?
We saw consistently the Democratic counties performing at high turnout levels, one after another. And then we saw what happened was when you compare the Crawford numbers to those past races, to those, say, Kamala Harris races, what you saw was at least a point or two, if not more, where her performance was better than what we expected and than what you would have seen in the past. And that's a pattern that leads to a victory.
So we saw Republicans and Democrats pouring a lot into this race. We looked at those numbers just a second ago. What does that tell you about the importance of this race to the Trump administration, to the future of our elections?
Yeah, people are going to take this and look, any off-year election, there's always the risk of making too much out of it, right? So with that as a caveat, what happens is people are going to say, okay, which part of the base can be activated? And when? And, Democrats will probably take a lot of heart from this, that they can activate those parts of the base. The cautionary tale is that before the 2024 election, they did that in a lot of elections, too. So it doesn't necessarily foretell what happens in the midterms, but it definitely speaks to, we saw a lot of the influence of Elon Musk here. We saw a lot of course, both parties concentrate a lot of money in, and all of that seems to have panned out.
Very good. Very interesting results there, and that does maintain the liberal swing on the Supreme Court for that state. We want to turn to senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe, who has been covering this race, speaking with both candidates. He joins us now on the phone. So, Ed, we saw Elon Musk giving out million-dollar checks, wearing a cheese head hat to rally Republican voters. Why does he care about this race so much?
Well, he and many of the other wealthy people who gave from out of state are concerned about the fact that this state court could, conceivably in the next year or so, redraw the congressional district lines in a state where you have a handful of competitive races. You're also likely to see the court consider some issues regarding abortion rights, labor rights, environmental policy as well. So there was reason for all comers. In this case, with Musk, he sued the state of Wisconsin in January over a law that basically bars automakers like his Tesla from directly selling to customers, and instead you have to use a franchise auto dealership. The thought was that he did that and then started donating to the conservative-backed candidate in hopes that maybe that guy, Brad Schimel, who's losing tonight, would conceivably be a vote against that law. But as he told us on Sunday when we spoke to him, he said, look, I used to be Attorney General of this state and would have defended that law or would have had to defend that law. So Musk thinks that I'm a vote for him. He's got another thing coming. I will say, Jesse, having spoken with Susan Crawford here, who's winning right now, at least leading by double digits, we should point out she spent much of the last 2 weeks especially campaigning against Musk, not really even talking about Brad Schimel, but inviting the fact that the wealthiest man in the world was running against her or trying to stop her. That seemed to work for her tonight. So there could be a lesson here for Democrats elsewhere. If you see Musk get involved or you want to use him as essentially the whipping boy the guy to run against, the antagonist, it could work in other competitive races in traditionally battleground states. She, in our interview, repeatedly brought the conversation back to Musk and raised concerns that out-of-state money from the wealthiest man in the world was going to potentially try to buy a seat in that state. And we should point out, this is one seat on a 7-member state Supreme Court, more than $81 million spent. It is the most expensive judicial race of its kind anywhere in the country, at least in the states that elect their top justices. And the numbers were just staggering, whether it was the $12 million from Musk's Political Action Committee, $3 million he donated directly to the state GOP, $1.5 million donated by the billionaire Democratic governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, to the state Democratic Party, $2 million plus from George Soros, the liberal activist that went to the state party, and others who cut big checks. It was a sign that everyone that spends money in this realm saw a chance to potentially throw a key contest that will weigh in on some of the hot-button issues of the day in a state that can swing the balance of power and certainly who lives in the White House.
With that balance of power on the Supreme Court maintaining that liberal swing, what does that mean for Musk's case and these other consequential decisions they're facing?
Well, most critically, outside observers and those in Wisconsin say, if there are challenges to the state's congressional map, you could see at least 2 of the districts redrawn in a way now that conceivably benefit Democrats or make it easier for them to win some key contests next year and potentially pick up some seats. And given the narrow margins in the House, we saw Republicans win 2 more seats back in special elections down in Florida tonight. It was similar state court decisions in places like North Carolina and Alabama and potentially some in Louisiana that redraw lines in 1 or 2 districts and then potentially could swing the control of the House to Democrats or Republicans by just that small enough margin. So that's what's at stake potentially in some of these races. And while you think it's a statewide race in one state, well, yes, but those that were participating from the outside say, sure, but it also could mean who controls Congress, who provides a check on President Trump after 2026, or do Republicans maintain control and allow him to keep going?
And that's where we're turning to Florida. Thank you, Ed, for giving us all of that background insight.